the dawn of human civilization, the society has witnessed several media for recording, storing, and communicating the information and knowledge. We have seen the clay tablets, parchment, and vellum, papyrus, paper, etc. in the ancient times for recording the information. Then the computers and the internet have given a new type of information sources into the electronic information sources. So we have two experts in our studios now, Mr. Divakar from IICTC CMB Library, Hyderabad, and Mr. Prafulla Chandra, Senior Editor, NISC, Hyderabad. What is electronic information, Mr. Divakar, and what are the formats the electronic information is available for the libraries?
Okay. Information that is held in a computer readable form, is called electronic information. Now we are all aware of the information stored in the form of books, information stored in the form of magazines, information stored in the form of newspapers, etc. But now we are witnessing a new era where information is being held on computers. Coming to the formats, most of the information that is stored today on computers is either on a CD, that is the optical media, or on a magnetic media, what we call hard disk. But a great majority of information that is held by computers today is held in the form of hard disks. I will give you some idea about the quantity of information that is held today in an electronic form. It has been estimated in a study that as of the year 2002, the complete the quantity of information held in an electronic form by the entire world comes to about 5 exabytes. 1 exabyte is 10 to the power of 18 bytes. Now we use bytes for measuring the quantity of information that can be held by a computer. 1 byte, as you know, is equal to 1 character. So 5 exabytes is equal to 10 to the power of 18 characters. So such is the mind-boggling quantity of data that is held in an electronic form today. Let us compare it with the traditional library system. If you look at the Library of Congress, for example, so Library of Congress is considered to be one of the largest libraries in the world today. So the Library of Congress of Washington holds about 19 million print books today. If you try to digitize all these 19 million books held by the Library of Congress, the data occupies about 5 terabytes. Okay. So that means you can imagine how big is the quantity of electronic information that is held today. Not everything that is electronic today is scholarly. Okay. A lot of information is held in private domain, but for today's discussion, probably we will concern ourselves to the publicly held information, especially the information that is handled, that is accessed by library and information centers. So it is estimated that the WWW, the World Wide Web, holds about 170 terabytes of information today. So this is the quantity of information that is available, that is accessible to the public in an electronic form.
That means traditionally the quantification of the electronic information, there have been studies. So we were thinking about the bytes and kilobytes and megabytes and gigabytes so far. Now it is going up to the terabytes, petabytes, and exabytes, EBs, EXABYTE, exabytes. That means the information other than the scholarly information or the information held by the libraries much more than the libraries at present having. So the quantification recently done, that is 17 EB exabytes of telephonic talk is going has been held in the year 2002. So there have been some research is going on the quantification of the information. Now let us see from the point of view electronic information, what are the major advantages of the electronic information? Mr. Prafulla Chandra.
Electronic sources of information offer several advantages when compared to the print media. Let's discuss each one of them. The first major advantage is they have international reach. Once you publish something on the internet, it is available globally to one and all at the same time. Theoretically, you can reach the whole world at one stroke. This is a great advantage of an electronic resource. And the second advantage is the speed of publication. As soon as your document is ready, you can publish it on the internet. There's no need to wait for printing and getting it bound. You can immediately publish the document on the internet. And once your document is published, it is available to the user immediately. They need not wait for the document to come, say, for example, by post. And another advantage is the electronic sources provide several additional capabilities which the print media cannot do. Take, for example, the provision of hyperlinks. Electronic sources contain several hyperlinks. These hyperlinks can take you to the website of the publisher, to the website of the document. Sometimes the author may be having his own website. For example, in the present days, the database records provide you not just bibliographic details and an abstract. They give you something more. They give you hyperlinks.
Yeah.
May I supplement to what Dr. Prafulla has just now said? You know, in the electronic format, another great advantage that we see from the user's point of view is that the user can decide the depth to which he can go. Take the case of science and technology publishing. Take the case of biology, for example. If there is an electron microscopic picture that is to be put, and there is limitation of the resolution that you can put in a printed journal or in a printed book. Printed medium, you know, has got its own limitations of reproducibility. Whereas in case of electronic documents, the actual the image captured from an electron microscope or the three-dimensional image of a molecule, it can directly be incorporated into the text of an electronic document. So the user can see the real thing instead of a copy of it. The real image can be witnessed by the user, and the user also will have the flexibility of looking at it either at 50 times magnification, 100 times magnification, or 2000 times magnification. He can see the details to the extent that he requires. And another thing is, instead of bombarding the user with the whole data, what the publishers are doing is they are giving the basic material is being presented in the text, and the additional information is being put as supplementary information. So only those people, those scholars that are interested in great details, they will click on the links for supplementary information. So in that way, it saves the time of the user. And another advantage that I see with the electronic information is the reproducibility. For example, if somebody needs a copy of the material, in the case of a book or a journal article, we can possibly make a Xerox copy and give it to the user. Okay? And when you give a Xerox copy, there is limitation of the quality. Especially if there are images, if there are photographs, we lose the quality when we Xerox it. Whereas in case of electronic information, when we deliver it electronically, when we copy it, and deliver it to the user, you don't lose any quality because you are copying it digitally. So you don't lose any quality. So what you get is true copy of the original resource. So the distribution is much more easier. So as Library and Information Center manages, the distribution task becomes much more flexible for us. If I have to send a copy of an article to somebody in Trivandrum, for example, I can just do it by clicking a few buttons and without losing any quality. So that is the great advantage of the digital information that we are handling today.
And one more, what we see that the physical volumes, in the case of print, you will find several volumes, but that volume concept is not there in the electronic information. Another is once you have created the data, it could be updated easily. And additionally, every time when you, in the case of print, you have to update and you have to print again, you have to publish again. That in the case of electronic information, you can update and it will be available as soon as it is possible. Then you have said that links, that means hyperlinks and hypermedia, hypertext links and hypermedia, both are possible in this. So as well as images as well as text linking to the other text. and also to the authors, publishers, linking and sending to the, and transporting anywhere, anyway. This publication cost you can avoid in the case of much of this in the, except the, what is for the creator and the publishers. Physical publication, that means printing, that those costs we can avoid in the case of electronic information. Then when we see that electronic information, we find several formats. In the case of print formats, generally we categorize these documents as primary, secondary, and tertiary. Can it be true with the case of the electronic information? Can we categorize them?
No, these categorizations like primary, secondary, tertiary, in my opinion, are rather artificial. Traditionally, for handling these kind of resources in a library, we put them as books, as monographs, as magazines, as journals, as abstracting and indexing services, etc. Because it's convenient to categorize them and shelve them separately. Because the size of these volumes may be different and the kind of usage may be different. But when we go to the electronic documents, the distinction is very artificial or very diffuse. And in several cases, we find that even the primary sources, what we mean by primary sources in the traditional sense is the material that is originally created by the author. Okay, what we mean by secondary is information on information, the resources which will lead you to the primary resource. So traditionally that has been the case with respect to the printed publications. But when we go to the electronic documents, most of the time you find a search engine attached to the printed document, to the primary document. Okay, that means the primary and secondary are merging. Okay, so the distinction is becoming very diffuse, with the era of electronic documents, and even if there is a distinction, and when we try to access a secondary source like abstracting and indexing resource, you may find hyperlinks to the primary document. Okay, you go to a place like Medline, for example, which is available publicly. So you go to Medline database and make a search on any medical topic, and the answers that you get, there could be a hyperlink. By clicking that hyperlink, it will take you to the primary resource, and you can even send a message to the original creator. So since there is this kind of a hypertext linking, the distinction is becoming a little diffuse between primary and secondary.
Even the references or citations given at the end of the articles, there may be hyperlinks from one document to the another document.
Certainly. So you have a text, and you have a list of bibliographic references given at the bottom of the text, and most of these bibliographic references are hyperlinked to the respective original resources. And if your library has access rights to that, okay, the user will be able to see the full text of even the bibliographic citation.
No, when you see we are categorized, but there is no categories in the case of electronic documents like primary and secondary side. But information as a document has certain formats. Maybe what are the formats, generally available formats? Not the physical, but information formats. A document format or
okay. When you talk about formats, the most popular format that is delivered to the user is PDF. Okay, that is given by, you need an Adobe Acrobat reader for accessing a PDF document. And next to PDF is the HTML, or the hypertext documents are most popular. Now people are using SCML, XML, etc. But these two are the basic formats for electronic documents, either PDF or the hypertext documents. But most of the people prefer PDF documents because they are more nearer to the printed text. So people are used to reading text on printed pages. So they find it more comfortable to read a PDF document than a hypertext document.
These are PDF and HTML and SCML.
Yeah.
Apart from this, you find the general formats like text format, document format, RTF, rich text format, and TIFF formats are also there for electronic documents. So, Mr. Prafulla Chandra, in the electronic information sources, the abstracting and indexing services were the first to appear as in the electronic format.
Right.
So those were the first before the other sources. So why they have preferred these secondary sources in the sense they as the print documents?
Yeah, when compared to print media, electronic sources have made tremendous impact, particularly in secondary sources such as bibliographies, indexing and abstracting services, and reference tools. This is mainly due to huge volume of information that is being compiled in the databases, etc. One of the major advantages of electronic sources is the searchability. Now we have databases where we can search using multiple fields at the same time. We can search several database products at the same time. The user need not be at one place. They can be based at several places. Once your product is available on the local network, several users can access it simultaneously. Now we have several databases covering all subjects, topics, and disciplines. Take, for example, we have biological abstracts, zoological abstracts, chemical abstracts. For library and information science, we have LISA. And we have for psychology, PsycInfo, the largest database in psychology. These are very huge databases containing lakhs of records. Now, making a literature search is very easy for the researcher. Within a matter of minutes, one can search these huge databases and get the results one needs. Another major advantage of electronic sources is once you perform a search, you get results. Now the databases have the capability to arrange these results in order of relevance. They give the most relevant records at the top. So you can be sure that what is most useful to you is available at the top. So this saves you time in reviewing the records.
E-books are becoming very popular. So what are the advantages of these e-books? What are these e-books?
Traditionally, what libraries started doing was they have been digitizing the printed collection. Okay, primarily for reasons of preservation and conservation. In a library, you have old books which are more than 50 years, 100 years old. They become yellow, they turn yellow, they become very brittle. You find it very difficult to maintain them on the stacks. So you try to digitize them, convert them into an electronic format, and then store them on a computer so that they can be held by the library for a longer period. So that has been the initiatives from the librarians to prepare or to convert print books into e-books. That's the way the things have started 10, 15 years ago. So essentially, we have two kinds of e-books. E-books that are digital equivalents of the print books. So that is, they just scan each page is scanned and then held in a digital form. So they are called e-books. And then in the last 3 to 4 years, we are seeing another kind of e-books. The kind of new e-books that we are witnessing are the ones where the content is totally created electronically with a lot of hypertext links, with a lot of images, etc. So in the creation process itself, people use digital technology, and they are making e-books. So the newer e-books that you get, they are much more than the older scanned images. So you can navigate through the contents of a book from one chapter to another chapter. You can hold it in a medium of your choice, and you can, as a librarian, you can deliver it to your users in a variety of ways. You can deliver the contents, you can deliver a given chapter, you can deliver the whole book or parts of a book, and then and the user can probably make a search on that. Every word in the book becomes searchable. There's a beautiful search engine attached to these things, and the user has a lot of flexibilities in that, and he can cut and paste portions of the material, and a variety of options are now becoming available with the case of e-books. And even the publishers are coming out with a variety of delivery options for e-books. Like you can buy it outright, just as you buy a book, and hold it with you permanently, or you can access it in a perpetual way, or you can access it for a limited period, say for 1 year, or for 6 months, or for 1 year, or for a month, or for a day, a single reading. There are different kinds of pricing models are emerging in the case of e-books. And we are also witnessing new kinds of devices for reading these e-books. For example, there are people have attempted to make palm top readers for reading e-books. The Sony Corporation of Japan, they have come out with a palm top reader for reading e-books, which are very portable, which are convenient to go wherever you want. Otherwise, we have the problem of carrying a computer wherever you go. For if you have to read an e-book. So that has been addressed by a few companies, and they are coming out with palm tops, which they look like slates, where you can navigate from one page to another page. You get the feeling that you are reading an actual printed book, though the content is held in a digital form, inside on a chip.
Most of the novels are also nowadays coming in as e-books, e-novels. So because whenever you have the time, for example, air passenger, airlines people, they are giving small gadgets through which they can read the e-novels. Like that e-magazines, they are called e-giants, E-Z-I-N-E-S, e-giants they are called. They are also for pleasure reading, time passing, leisure material, like they are nowadays very popular, becoming very popular. And in the case of reference sources, traditionally we have the dictionaries, encyclopedias, directories, statistical abstracts, biographies, geographical sources. We have these categories. All these categories of reference sources are nowadays available in the form of the electronic sources. So what is why the educational institutions, mainly they prefer e-dictionaries and multimedia encyclopedias? Why you think they are very popular in the education side, Mr. Prafulla?
Reference tools such as dictionaries, encyclopedias, now most of them are available in electronic form. The main reason for going for these tools in electronic form is reduced cost. For example, we have Oxford English Dictionary, the most respected dictionary in the world. If you buy a print copy, its cost is £2,000. The same thing you can have on a CD-ROM for just £250. So just for 1/8 of the cost of the print version, now you are able to buy the whole dictionary in CD form. That's one of the major advantages of electronic forms.
But I differ with Prafulla here.
The costing factor.
About the costing factor. Let us look at it in a different perspective. The costing is always market driven. Okay, we cannot categorically say that all electronic documents are and the whole gamut of electronic information is cheaper than the print medium. In my opinion, when you buy a book, what you pay for is for the content. You pay for the content. You don't really pay for the paper or the printing. No, the paper is only a medium. Okay, when you buy a CD-ROM, you don't really pay for the plastic stuff that comes. You pay for the content of the CD-ROM. So the content creation cost is probably same whether it is for a book or for an electronic document. So it's only the how many copies they are able to sell that determines the cost. In case of Encyclopedia Britannica or in case of Oxford English Dictionary, the costs have definitely come down drastically. It has come down by about 1/10 probably. So that is because they are able to mass produce it. The production cost is much cheaper when compared with the production cost of a printed book. For example, the paper cost, the delivery cost is not much there. Only the content cost is there. So in such mass produced resources, the costs are coming down. But in case of scholarly information, for example, in case of journals, the costs are really not coming down. Whether you take the electronic version or the print version, the difference is very marginal, because what you pay is for the content, for the thought content, not really for the medium.
Medium is, for example, a CD, physically it costs about less than 10 rupees.
Yeah.
So if you can see a 200-page book, so it's costlier as a paper, printing charges, transportation, etc. So we were talking about only the dictionaries.
Right.
What about the dictionaries also? E-dictionaries, they have several advantages.
Yeah, we have several good examples. For example, the Cambridge University Press has released this year Cambridge Advanced Learners Dictionary. Just for 450 rupees, you can have a print copy of the dictionary along with the CD. So they are combining the media also, the print media as well as the electronic media. On the CD-ROM, you will find the entire text of the dictionary, plus you'll have something more. For example, if you want to know the pronunciation of a word, the British pronunciation, you have the option. If you want the American pronunciation, you have the option. Plus, you can also check your pronunciation. You can pronounce a word and check whether you are doing it in the standard manner or not. Most of the popular encyclopedias are now available on CD-ROM as well as through internet or web-based service. For example, we have Encyclopedia Britannica, we have Columbia Encyclopedia, we have Encarta Online, and there's another encyclopedia service company known as Grolier Online. It provides 3 important tools. One is the New Book of Knowledge. Even the Encyclopedia Americana is provided by the Grolier service.
Encyclopedia Americana Online,
Yeah,
and also the what is say Encyclopedia Britannica, of course, that is the Grolier, and World Book Encyclopedia.
Yeah, that's one of the popular encyclopedias,
Encyclopedias
which is available at a very affordable price.
Right. Now, what are the major advantages of these multimedia encyclopedias?
Actually, when compared to print media, these multimedia encyclopedias provide you a rich experience. For example, if you want to see a molecule, how it looks
Three-dimensional.
in actual reality, only a multimedia encyclopedia can provide you that view. And we have also several subject encyclopedias. Take, for example, in philosophy, we have a Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy. It's available online and it's free. There's another encyclopedia called Internet Encyclopedia of Philosophy. That's also free. And the Johns Hopkins University, they used to publish the Walker's Mammals. It's considered as one of the best resource encyclopedia relating to mammals. Now it is available online. When you visit their website, you find a world map. Just by clicking on any region on the world map, you can immediately access information on animals which are living in that region.
If you go to the site http://www.nlm.nih.gov, this is the site of National Library of Medicine of the US, and a whole lot of health information is available at this site, which is free for everybody. It's available 24 hours, 365 days. And the information, the health information that you find at the NLM site is filtered, it has been tested, it's very authentic, qualitative, very reliable information you will find. You know that they're trying to campaign for health awareness. So not only the medical professionals, even the common public, even the common man can find a lot of very useful, authenticated, qualitative health information from the National Library of Medicine site. It's more than an encyclopedia there. So they also have a scholarly source called Medline, which is a secondary service. Apart from Medline, this huge source of full text health information that is free on the site of the National Library of Medicine.